Today, I'm going to be talking about assessing students' experience of library instructions and providing an overview of the issue. So, to give a brief history, libraries began as a sort of locale for well-off educated people, particularly white men, and it even struggled in the early stages with accepting women as patrons, even though women were historically the librarians who served there, and there was even a period where there was pushback for having female librarians over their qualifications. And over the years, we've moved towards more inclusivity, and libraries have really shifted towards expanding the breadth of libraries from a sort of privileged place for a specific demographic to more of a welcoming area and space that's accepting of all. And libraries have also shifted more towards education and being present in academia and helping in that area. And it has embraced change and it evolves with the times. So, for example, during pandemics, libraries offered their services for more than just a place to get books, but a place for food, for shelter, etc. So, libraries have sort of become a catch-all for society's needs. So to give a case study for research librarians specifically and students' experience and student learnings, in the 70s, libraries were criticized for not being experimental enough or creative enough in their library instruction approaches. So library, particularly at Iowa State, embraced this challenge and they started developing new approaches. They developed web series videos to instruct students on how to use the libraries, how to get access to the materials that they wanted. So this was the sort of the beginning of instructional videos of how to access services. And they did a comparison of whether students performed well after viewing these videos, if they felt it was sufficient knowledge for being comfortable to navigate the library and its services after the videos. And they found that students definitely found the videos engaging and it was a novel way of instructing students. But at the end of the day, pairing that with um, real real life situations and real life experience, as well as personalized librarian instruction, was the most effective. But incorporating clear learning objectives, getting feedback from students at all stages, incorporating that feedback, giving them second attempts, reassessing, and being open to embracing the changes that come along with instruction. So adaptability was emphasized very strongly. Now to navigate to a more recent example, that one was from the 70s to the 80s. This one is a study that took place in 2023, and it evaluated student learnings along the way. So this particular research librarian paired with a faculty member in a history department to work with their students to determine how they learned and how effectively they could utilize online research because it was post-pandemic and during the pandemic. So how effectively were students learning when they just searched online library catalogs and materials? And evaluating students' learning along the way was a big key part of this, as well as utilizing effective learning objectives, incorporating self-evaluations for students, polls, getting feedback along the way, and really emphasizing adapting to disciplinary mindsets. So, say students in a history major discipline approach research much differently than students in, say, a science discipline do. And this researcher particularly emphasized collaborating with faculty and working very closely with faculty to get that student feedback that they want and to incorporate methods of instruction that were geared towards each discipline and their specific methods of researching and approaching research. So, an emphasis on giving specific examples as you go, measuring success in whichever tools that you have to be able to objectively look and see whether students are learning effectively and how effectively they are learning, and then providing opportunities for student experience in the classroom. So, as opposed to simply lecturing students and saying, this is how you do it, and navigating on the screen, you have to also provide the students opportunities to do that navigation themselves within the classroom and let them be comfortable with experimenting with the system and learning on their own. Having that hands-on, tactile experience was very effective. So, where to go from here? And as a research librarian, as a academic librarian, as even a public librarian, engaging in lifelong learning and research yourself as a librarian is very effective. Being abreast of the changes and the developments in education, particularly in the library setting, and interacting with students is very effective. Embrace change with excitement and welcome new methods of operating. This may sound common sense, but a lot of particularly public librarians don't necessarily take well to adapting to change. So, changing your mindset to be less of a, oh, there's this new thing that I now have to learn, and changing it to excitement of your job is growing, it's shifting, it's evolving, and your duties are adapting and changing as well. Having a positive outlook on that is very effective, particularly when working with students. And collaborating as often as possible with faculty, if you're an academic librarian, with the public, with organizations, that's very effective for expanding mindsets and knowledge and getting to know the population and the demographic that you're serving and how you can serve them much more effectively. So that's all for this section. I hope you found it informative and that you learned about the history.
Hello, I'm Julie Higginbottom, and I'll be sharing some examples and case studies that deal with the topic of assessing student experience of library instruction. These examples can be beneficial for other librarians to see what instruction has worked in the past and to provide evidence of library impact for funding and research purposes. The first source I'd like to share comes from a recorded talk at the University of Chicago titled Engaging Library Instructors with Assessment, given by Mark McEachern and Jeffrey Cordell. McEachern shared how the University Library at the University of Michigan, through an instruction committee, created an assessment committee that partnered with other campus experts to understand how to effectively use assessment. Along with that, Cordell showed the evaluation form the instructors used to assess the experiences their first-year students had with library instruction. It had 6 questions with answer ranges from strongly disagree to strongly agree, as well as a not applicable category. The questions were quite standard and asked the students to reflect on their library instruction and to categorize if and how well the instruction helped them. They also included open-ended questions, such as, what, if anything, in this session was confusing, which is helpful for students' own reflection, as well as in giving the instruction librarians feedback on what in their instruction may need revision. So, the assessment committee was able to determine the efficacy of their library instruction over a semester by using the evaluation forms Cordell shared. By using the statistics gathered to create a spreadsheet detailing the average score of each category and the evaluation form, they could determine the overall student experience with library instruction. Additionally, Cordell used himself as a case study to determine how his library instruction differed from the overall average, as it was his first year teaching library instruction. There were a set of statistics that listed the average numbers from the evaluation form from just students who were giving his instruction against the average numbers of all students who participated. It was shown where Cordell's instruction may have been weaker and what he could work on in coming semesters. This was proposed to be implemented for other library instructors as well, so that each instructor can see their own statistics line with the overall averages to gain more understanding of the student experience to their own instruction. Moving on, the next set of examples I'd like to share comes from the Association of College and Research Libraries, prepared by Karen Brown with contributions from Kara J. Mellifont. The document titled Documented Library Contributions to Student Learning and Success, Building Evidence with Team-Based Assessment and Action Campus Projects goes into a large assessment project and their findings. Within the ACRL's assessment project, there was the program Assessment in Action, Academic Librarians and Student Success, or AIA for short, created to engage with more higher education institutions on assessing student experience of library instruction and to gather data. Through the assessment project, data was gathered from many types of colleges and universities throughout 34 U.S. states and one in Canada over a 2-year period. Most of the assessment on library contributions to student learning and success was done through surveys, rubrics, and pre- and post-tests. AIA team members that contributed to the program were made up from various campus spaces, but primarily were teaching faculty, other librarians, institutional researchers, and library administrators. Next, the 4 main AIA findings and evidence on assessment were that 1. Students benefit from library instruction in their initial coursework. 2. Library use increases student success. 3. Collaborative academic programs and services involving the library enhance student learning. And 4. Information literacy instruction strengthens general education outcomes. The program focused on collaborative assessment, which emphasized how team-based assessment leads to library leadership, how libraries collaborated with other campus units for outreach, and how using collaborative assessment gave librarians confidence in library advocacy and advanced their professional growth. Additionally, a librarian offered a quote on how their library, the Northwest Arkansas Community College, was positively impacted by the project, saying, "This project is one of the first that the library has undertaken to track the impact of our information literacy instruction services. In that regard, the simple act of collecting, studying, and reporting data to our colleagues throughout the college is a huge step for us. It's a way of communicating to other stakeholders that we take student learning seriously and want to be an active participant in facilitating student success and retention." Overall, these examples and case studies are helpful tools in seeking the best methods of assessment and in viewing how case studies have shown library instruction and its impact on students in higher education. That's the end of my lesson. I hope you learned something new. Thank you.
So, how can you assess student experience or learning through library instruction? By measures of attitude and performance. Here's a chart which shows the measures of attitude and the measures of performance. Researchers Schilling and Applegate note that measures of attitude are based on a learner's perceptions of their skills and learning, including what people think, feel, or believe about the training experience or about their skills. First, surveys are methods of gathering information by asking people questions. Surveys can be multiple choice questionnaires, they can be open-ended questions, and surveys can be in online, physical form, or by telephone. Surveys are used to evaluate instruction, instructors, or training resources. Next are interviews and focus groups. Interviews and focus groups are methods which ask individuals or groups of people questions. A focus group asks a group of individuals questions about a specific topic. Both can gather ideas, details, and insights of what students are thinking. Third, we have narratives. Narratives can be journal entries, 1-minute reflections, or even blog posts. Narratives promote self-reflection and self-assessment, and it also reflects perceptions and captures the thought process of students. Last, for measures of attitude, we have observation. Instructional librarians can observe students or patrons in several settings to ascertain if students are understanding or connecting with the content. Questions to be asked are students interested in the content that's being taught? Can students apply their knowledge and perform tasks? After measures of attitude, we have measures of performance. Measures of performance are based on actual students' work. Can students show through actions that they are informationally literate? First, we have tests, exams, and practical exercises. Written tests can reflect theoretical knowledge. Practical exercises and tests demonstrate applied skills. Practical exercises can also include tasks like exploring a sophisticated database, creating keyword searches, and more. Next, we have standardized information literacy tests, which can be found online. These tests include the SAILS test and the Credo test. Standardized tests are grounded in state, national, and professional standards, and they also rely on pre- and post data. Third, we have course projects or research papers. Librarians and instructors use course projects and research papers to analyze the work of students and be able to ascertain if they are learning the skills of information literacy. Course projects and research papers are based on the actual student's work, and it involves in-process evaluation and in-product evaluation. Last, we have rubrics. Rubrics are descriptive scoring themes that provide clear, concise descriptions of performance expectations at each level of mastery of a product or process of learning. Rubrics provide flexibility and scalability. Also, instructional librarians can create their own rubrics. Here is an example of a librarian-created rubric. There are criteria and learning outcomes in the first column, and then there are performance expectations in the next columns ranging from 0 to 3, with 3 points meaning proficiency and 0 points for not meeting or completing the work. Therefore, assessing student experience of library instruction through measures of attitude and performance are important because they demonstrate student learning outcomes and how library instruction benefits student retention and satisfaction in higher education.
Next, we will talk about challenges in assessing student success in library instruction. I will highlight 3 challenges that are prevalent in studies. These challenges include assessment, collecting data, and student interactions within the libraries. These 3 topics highlight where challenges and limitations can occur both for students and for librarians. I chose these 3 areas specifically because these were the topics that appeared most often in studies regarding student success within library instruction. Assessment will be the first topic we look at in regards to challenges in assessing student success in library instruction. Connecting with institutional requirements can be a difficult limitation for librarians for multiple reasons. The first being that oftentimes, librarian instruction is not included in institutions' outcome statistics. This means that either there are no assessments happening in librarian instruction that can be used to measure student success, or alternatively, they are not being recorded as statistics in the first place. This is a challenging limitation because it is hard to gauge student success in the library if there is not a meter to do so in the first place. This also oftentimes can create the struggle for the librarian to come up with developing measures to assess students, which will likely look completely different than a standard class way of assessing students. This is because librarians often do not get the same amount of face time and instructing time that professors or teachers would have with students. We will look more deeply at that challenge in a moment. The next challenge in assessing student success in the library is collecting students' data. Without a standardized assessment to measure student success, like I mentioned in the previous slide, the alternative is to look at the data of individual patrons or students. This is an extremely slippery slope and one that has its own set of challenges. The main issue is protecting student privacy. Engaging in collecting students' data means having access to sensitive information that can make students anxious or hesitant to use the library if they know they are being quote-unquote monitored. Finding ways to look into student data while also protecting the student and not hindering their exploration of information is crucial. There are ways to do it, including collecting data into a data warehouse and then having all personal information removed and leaving only the student success data and not the individual student information. This by itself is a hefty task and can be a challenging ask of librarians. This takes a lot of additional resources to do successfully. It is not only a serious challenge, but ultimately a large limitation to using this route of measurement of student success as well. The final challenge I will be talking about in terms of challenges in assessing student success in library instruction is student interactions within the library. While assessments and data privacy are crucial to assessing student success, and it is equally crucial to address the challenges in doing them, we don't have either without student interaction in the first place. Librarians are not often in a constant teaching setting. They may have instructional sessions sometimes, but even then, teaching is not often a major job duty. That being said, librarians have to be creative to provide information to students, especially information they hope to have assessments for that can provide helpful information later on. One-on-one interactions are often the route librarians take with students and patrons, so it can be especially hard to assess those interactions and how it influences student success. Additionally, studies have found that longitudinal studies don't often work with librarians due to their careers and the limitation of being around the same students for a long period of time. Librarians and libraries are often just a quick stop for students, one that can be crucial to their success and studies. But with such short visit times, sometimes it can be hard to measure how the library influenced that success. In conclusion, though there are many ways that students are influenced by the library and librarians, it can be hard to find a quick or useful way to measure that success. Assessing student success within the library is crucial because of how much libraries and librarian instruction can influence student success. Finding the right ways to measure that success is the key to creating growth within library and library instruction, and also growth for students. That's all we have for the presentation. These next couple of slides are our annotated bibliography. Thank you.